Hi, my name's Eden. You may know me from TikTok as French Girl Vibes, and today I'm going to be sharing with you everything that you need to know and my little tips and tricks for securing a job as an au pair in Paris. So a little bit of backstory about me. I am, as you can hear from my accent, British, and I decided to be an au pair in 2020, October 2020 to be specific. So right splat bang in the middle of the pandemic. It was much more complicated back then. I would like to share some tips and sort of run through a little bit actually what au pairing is, what it includes doing, and just sort of help anyone that's looking into doing this. And really, an au pair contract can stretch from 1 year to 2 years, and it's obviously the school year that you work. It's generally about 9 months per contract. First things first, what is an au pair? So an au pair is essentially a nanny. But it's a little bit of a different setup because legally speaking, au pairs can only be between the ages of 18 to 25. So they're usually young women, but also young men as well. And your job is to look after a child or children in a family and do a sort of language exchange while also not having the typical nanny and family setup. It's generally more like you kind of are a part of their family. The family that you work for as an au pair, we refer to this as a host family. The way that it works between you and your host family is it's not your regular job. So you have the family and you have the child or children, and you have you, the au pair. You'll generally have your own little studio apartment. Typically it's a chambre de bon, so it's very small, but it's usually in the same building and it's your own space, just because Paris apartments generally aren't that big. So I think host families are happier to just have a separate space for their au pair. So some ground rules to know if you're looking to au pair. Your host family is responsible for you in general for however long that you are working for them, and they're responsible for 3 things most importantly. First thing being housing you. They have to house you, whether that's a room in their apartment or like I just said, a separate apartment elsewhere in the building or close to the house somehow. The second thing is they have to feed you. So whether that's you help yourself to their food at their house or they give you grocery food money, they have to feed you. And the third thing is they have to cover your healthcare. That's a big part of the au pair contract that often gets overlooked, but it's also the most important. I have some advice for anyone looking into au pairing, and the first thing is please do not do this if you don't genuinely love children. I grew up in a house where my mum was a childminder. She has been a childminder my entire life, and I have grown up around lots of other children, and as I got older helped her look after lots of other children. I babysat all throughout my teenage years, lots of children. I have a lot of experience with kids. I have a big family, and so I genuinely really like being in the company of children, and so au pairing felt very natural to me. I have met many girls here who go for this job just because it's an opportunity to live in Paris for a year, and there are other ways that you can do that. Don't involve looking after other people's children if that's not something that you genuinely think you'll be good at or be able to cope with. Children can of course be quite difficult and it takes a lot of work, and if you're not prepared to put that work in, I just would not even bother trying to get a job as an au pair because you won't like it. It's really important to remember that the years that children have au pairs typically are some of their most formative years. These are times that they're going to grow up and remember, and you want to have this time as something for them to look back at and think, wow, that was so amazing, my au pair was so lovely. I think it's really important to consider that this is not like a life hack to live in Paris. You are going to be extremely present in a very young child's life. It's so important that you can form a bond with the child or children in order to make it easier for the both of you, because ultimately these are children who have usually very busy parents that aren't able to be super duper present in their everyday lives because they have busy jobs and whatnot, and the whole point of having an au pair is to kind of give them that extra layer of support and guidance from an adult, and also learn another language. So that brings me to my next point. You have to be super patient. When I first started, she did not want to speak English with me. She didn't speak a lot of English, and I didn't speak really any French. It took a while for her to really get comfortable around me. For a few months, she did get quite frustrated because she didn't know how to express herself in a way that I would understand. And I get this feeling too sometimes when I'm speaking French because I literally don't have the vocabulary to express what I want to express, and it's super super frustrating. So it's really important to have patience with these children. More often than not, they're gonna have a few tantrums and whatnot in the beginning. Ride it out, just try and be super calm. The thing I will say is if you're looking to au pair in Paris, I would really try and look for families that are actually in Paris before going to the outskirts, because there are so many families in central Paris, actually in the city, with children that need au pairs. So how do we find a family? My biggest tip would be to use Au Pair World. It's a website, I will link it in the description for you guys. It's a free website and it's kind of like a dating app, except it's really old-fashioned and it's not for dating, it's to connect people who want to be au pairs and families. It's an old forum style website and you do have to kind of make sure you're on it all the time so you don't miss messages and stuff. But I would definitely recommend it because it is free, and actually everyone that I know who has au paired here has found their job through Au Pair World. And so what you want to do is you want to go on Au Pair World, you want to create a profile, and on this profile you just want to be very honest about exactly what you're looking for. I'll give you an example of what I had on my profile as what I was looking for. I was looking for a family in the west of Paris because I had a friend living over this way. I put on my profile that I wanted to look after a little girl because I just feel like I can relate to a little girl. I remember being a little girl. I have nieces that are very young. But I was open to looking after a little boy as well. I just wanted to look after one child because I was new to au pairing and I just wanted to be able to focus on one child. But my maximum was two if that opportunity did arise. Be realistic about how many children that you think you can actually manage and look after. Tell them a bit about yourself. Speak about any previous experience you have looking after children. If you have any pictures of you with any children, whether that's your nieces, nephews, cousins, things like that, make sure that you upload those to your profile. Obviously when you're uploading pictures to your profile, this is not Instagram. Think about how you would like to be perceived by these parents. Be honest about your experience looking after children. Make sure that you mention any like dietary requirements in that little box at the end of your profile. So for me, I'm a vegetarian, I don't eat meat. So I did put that in the bottom because I didn't want that to be a problem for any families that I was looking at. I just put next to that statement that I was a vegetarian that I have no problem preparing meat for the children, because I just don't want to eat it myself. Now let's talk finding families. If you click your desired city, I believe that it will just show you all of the families that are looking for someone in that city. Really read through the profiles. Some of the profiles are in French, and if you don't speak French, that might be a problem for you. Just screenshot them and put them into the Google Translate app and it'll translate all of it for you. Personally, looked at a few families. I was really picky because I didn't want to end up in a situation where I wasn't happy, because that is really common and that's why it's really important to take your time. But I spoke to 3 or 4 families on the online messaging platform. Just send them a little message like, hi, my name is so and so, I'm looking to be an au pair in Paris for a year. I came across your profile, I feel like we could be a perfect match. Please could you let me know when you might be available for a Skype call so we can meet and talk more about this. Hopefully if your family is still looking for an au pair at this point, then they will get back to you. French people, generally speaking, are kind of slow at responses, so don't be like discouraged if you don't hear from them for a few days. Just try and get that Skype call arranged. If they like the look of your profile, I'm sure they'll be open to a call with you. It's great to really speak to them, I guess, in person over Skype or Zoom, because then you get to get a real feel for the family and the dynamic. One thing I will say as well is if a family reaches out to you and tries to do a Zoom or Skype call, but you don't really think that they'll be the perfect fit for you, still do the call. It's really worth the experience, because I think the first one can be so nerve-wracking, especially if you're someone that doesn't speak to strangers a lot of the time. So it's really important to just take any kind of opportunity that presents itself to you, see the vibe on the Zoom call and go from there. Okay, now this is the most important part of the video. This is my Zoom call tips. So first and foremost, you want to get on the call, be really smiley, hello, how are you? And then when they give the opportunity for you to start asking questions, you're going to want to discuss the child or children first. Do not get on the call and start talking about, can I see the apartment? What's in it for me? Don't do that. Their child is supposed to be the priority and you need to show them that from the get-go. Ask them about their children's interests, their hobbies, what do they like to get up to, what do they like to eat, just things like that. And then you want to get into the more nitty-gritty things. So you want to ask, have they had a nanny before? how have they been with the nanny before? This obviously varies on the age of the child, but if a child's never been away from its parents before and you're its first nanny, that's going to be quite a difficult job. They're not going to like you from the get-go probably, and it's going to take a lot of work, and you need to know that before signing up for that. So that's why it's really important to ask questions like that. And if they have had nannies or au pairs before, do ask if they can put you in contact with them, and if they're happy for you to have like a quick discussion with the previous nanny or au pair, just so that you can make sure that their experience was good as well. If they've had an au pair or nanny before, massive bonus if you can speak to them. And you want to ask little things that regard their parenting style, like how can you ensure that I'm going to have authority over this child? A lot of parents I've seen in this job will tell the au pair, yeah, like the kids are really well behaved, but actually the kids only listen to their parents, which is a massive problem for whenever the parents aren't there, because then if they don't respect you in the same way that they respect the parents, you're going to have no authority. It's going to make your job really hard. Make sure that this is something that comes up in discussion, and listen to these answers. See how their responses to the more difficult questions make you feel. If they're awkward about it, if they are like skirting around the question, I would say those are red flags and something to look out for. You want to ask how much they would pay. I say pay, it's not really pay, it's called pocket money. I believe the au pair world says the absolute minimum for this should be €80 a week. Most au pairs that I've met get €90 a week. And then there should be a discussion also about how much they plan to pay you hourly for any overtime. So if you're babysitting in the evenings, how are they going to compensate you for that? How much would they pay? Are you happy with that? Some host families are very generous, others are more on the, I say, stingy side. So see what you're comfortable with. Ask things like, how is the living set up, and how is the food going to work? Are you going to buy groceries for me? Should I buy them for myself? Are you going to budget that in when you give me money monthly? Things like that. And then most importantly, girls and boys, you need to ask about healthcare, especially now, because if you're coming from the UK, Brexit is a big problem. Because of Brexit, we no longer have European healthcare, and so it's really important that your host family are prepared to pay like a health insurance for you. Do not be scared to bring up the important things, because you never know what could happen when you're here. You do not want to be in a situation where you have hospital bills to pay that you cannot pay for. Oh, and another thing that's really important to ask about is holidays. So obviously, schools in France, I believe they have a holiday like every 6 weeks, and it's 2 weeks at a time. Ask the host family what those would look like. Most host families in Paris will have like a second home that they go to in the countryside, where they will go for those 2 weeks off. You need to ask whether you are going to be expected to go with them. For example, if it's a 2-week holiday, maybe you can work out that you join them for 1 week of the holiday, and then the other holiday you're in Paris and you're free. Make sure that this host family are not looking for someone who is just going to drop everything for them. It needs to be an equal and fair agreement for the both of you, and you deserve holiday and you deserve breaks as much as anyone else. And just a quick thing to mention as well, on an au pair contract, you should not be working more than 25 hours a week. Make sure that you discuss the schedule that they would expect you to work and add up those hours, and if it is more than 25 hours, then just discuss with them how are they going to compensate you for that extra time, because it's really important, and so many host families do not stick to that 25-hour rule. So beware. After that initial Skype call, kind of going from there, what it's going to look like is you might need a few days to think about it. Even if you feel like after the call that you don't need a few days to think about it, do take a few days, because you don't want to jump on any opportunity. Always sleep on it. They may offer you the position, they may not. You have to consider the fact that these families often have a lot of girls that they're interviewing, because they can't just have all of their eggs in one basket. So unfortunately what that means is they might find someone that they think is just more compatible with their family and what they're looking for. And so even if you decide that this is the family that you'd like to be with, they might not offer you the role. So just make sure you stay in contact. Try and get their WhatsApp or something, because it's way easier to message on there than on the Au Pair World platform. And just sort of check in after a few days and see like, okay, I've thought about it and I think I would really love to come work for you guys if you'll have me, something like that. And I'm sure they'll get back to me like, yes, we'd love to have you, so glad to hear that, or thank you so much, but unfortunately we found someone that's better. It's gonna go either way. But yeah, that's why it's also important for you to be interviewing with multiple families as well, just to increase your opportunity. And that's kind of all of the advice I have in terms of like au pair world and finding a family. I just wanted to add, it's important to look around certain times. You want to start looking for an au pair job, I would say, before everyone else starts looking. So everyone is looking in August. You should start looking, I think, in June or July. I actually started looking in September when the school year had already started. So I just got really lucky that there was also a family that was kind of running behind on things, but it was definitely slim pickings at that point. It's definitely better to start looking earlier on. And yeah, I feel like I have covered everything. I'm sure I've left some things out. So if you do have any questions or anything, you feel like I didn't make something clear, feel free to just leave that in the comments below and I will try and get back to you as soon as possible. And yeah, if you're new to my channel and you've made it this far into the video, well done, that was really long. My name's Eden. I am a content creator living in Paris, and I share lots of content across my socials about living in Paris, what it's like as an expat, as well as like Parisian style and like nice little cafes and restaurants, places to visit in Paris while you're here. So if you do end up doing your au pair year here in Paris, it's definitely worth giving me a follow and a subscribe, because I can give you all of the best insider tips. I've been here for a while now. I hope that I have given you a little bit of insight and tips that you can use to help find a family. So yeah, have a great day. See you.